influenced our entire adolescence. I wore clothes in the Squire. Who wore clothes in the Squire Shop? All right. And I am embarrassed to say, you know, those little white tight shorts that... My wife is blackmailing me with those right now. They were sort of disco shorts that you thought you could sell, and we went to the parks and to play tennis and all sorts of embarrassing stuff. T-shirts. Who wore tight Squire Shop T-shirts?
U2 T-shirts.
All right.
Millions of them.
So he did more than that. He also sponsored the race for a couple of years in 80, help me, 79 and 80, where we wouldn't have had Seafair if it wasn't for Squire.
No, we went to the governor of the state of Washington. I was told by Bill Muncie and Bernie Little and all the group that you'll never charge on Lake Washington, because originally Lake Washington was lowered about 1920. So the parks became part of the, and they had a clause that said you could never charge in those areas. And I think my son here could tell you, don't ever use can't in anybody's language to me. Because when I heard that continuously, I said, we will charge on Lake Washington. I went to Dixie Lee Ray, who was a customer, by the way, of her nephews for the Squire Shop.
That's a frightening thought of Dixie Lee Ray and Squire Shop clothes.
Well, she wasn't in it, but she bought it for her nephews and everybody. So, yeah. But anyway, we went to Olympia, and O'Brien and George Fleming were that district's 8th representative, and we went to Olympia and we got it put on a bill, and so today, up to any time, up to 4 days beforehand, they can charge in Lake Washington. And now look at it, how much it's grown and everything else. First thing that Charles Royer, who happened to be mayor, when he heard what happened, he, of course, made a nice call to me and wanted to know if 40% of the money that comes in at Seafair could pay for all the double time paid for police that were in all parades and everything else. So everybody was chopping into the money, but we have Seafair.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned can't and money in the same sentence, so you cannot help us raise money to restore this boat. But he's not smiling.
I think I wrote a check to start this boat about 4 years ago.
And I want to let everyone know, it's a great reunion. We're thrilled to have everyone here. And this is, in many ways, the kickoff of our plan to restore the Squire Shop. We have 2 of the hulls. You raised 5 hulls over the years. First, we'll do a quiz here. First hull was the U-64.
Correct.
Second hull was the U-65.
U-65, which was...
Wait, I gotta ask them.
Lincoln Thrift. Lincoln Thrift.
That was my trivia question.
Oh,
I was asking these guys. Does anyone know what the U-65 started out as? She's so smart.
What was the Lincoln Thrift? What did they do?
Say this along.
Lincoln Thrift was owned by a gentleman that owned the banks in Arizona who went to jail and lost everything, and I bought it out of bankruptcy and brought it up here.
Yeah, what did they do? It was a scam. It was... Yeah. All right, so then after the Lincoln Thrift, you had your first original Squire Shop built. And Danny Walters is so freaking smart. He's got my notes over there. He just looked on. And the first boat was built by... and designed by...
Dave Nolan.
Designed by... David Nolan. And they're both here tonight.
They're right here. Here's the builder, and here's the designer right up here. And has designed many other Boeing projects.
And here we have J.C. Cartwright arriving. We need a bigger clock. We need one of those 8-foot in diameter big starting clocks to get J.C. on time. And all right, so who was the driver of that first Squire Shop that was built by Dave Nolan and Norm Berg? Young kid with blonde. What do they call that hairdo, Chip? What's that? A mullet? A blonde mullet?
That sounds like a golf strike or something.
All right, so that was the 3rd boat. The 4th boat was the other boat we have out here.
Yes.
Started out with Circus, and when Chip broke the first Berg boat, you bought the second one.
That's correct.
And can anyone point at the last Squire Shop?
It is in here.
It's in here. It's restored there as the U00 Blue Blaster. And Don Mock, if we don't get a little bit more money out of Atlas, we're painting it red and white.
And put Squire on it.
Because he's here and no one from Atlas is. So we talked about 5 boats. There were 6 drivers. First driver, of course, was Jerry Banks.
That's correct.
I'm going to ask these guys. The second driver was not Chip Hanover. No. His first name was Pete. Pete LaRock. Second driver drove the U65.
Yep.
Actually, Chip was the second driver. Third driver was Pete. Fourth driver, fifth driver, sixth driver, Mickey Riemann, Tommy Deeth, and Earl Hall. And I heard that Earl was coming. Did he make it yet? All right.
Coming all the way from East Coast.
Yes.
Quite a fan club coming from all over here.
You're huge. I did get a little bit off. One of the things that I want to do now, Jack Berry is giving me the finger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
He did step in Tri-Cities.
In Tri-Cities after...
Well, somebody went for a bath.
Yeah, Chip jumped out of the boat or something in Tri-Cities and Bob Miller took it out for a heat.
Yes,
All right, we have not yet shown our appreciation to Bob and his Squire Shop crew for all that they have done for the sport. So can we take a minute now and just give a huge round of applause to Bob Style and Squire Shop.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. It was probably the best years of my life running the Squire Shop and being involved with also the racing in the Northwest. And many malls saw the display boats Christmas time and all over, and I'd like to say my son was one of the drivers of all that right back here. So he's going to take over the construction with all these other guys out here now that put one together so we can have another Rolls-Royce engine out there with 4 or 5 of them coming down the start line like we used to have in the old days.
That gives you goosebumps. It's under the sweatshirt, but that gives you goosebumps. All right, so what I'd like to do now is, there are a ton of really great stories here, and in a while we're going to get pizza and beer and you can walk around and tell stories, but I'd like to ask 5 or 6 of you to stay up here and we'll try and share some stories. So I'd like Bob, Chip, Jerry Zubich, Dave Nolan, Nordberg, JC. Are you guys okay? Anyone else wants to stay up here and tell a story? Don, you want to stay up?
My story's on the blog.
Yeah, you can tell them. So if you guys, we have some chairs behind you at the table, and if the rest of you folks want to sit down and listen to, unless Danny, you have stories. No.
I'll tell them later.
Danny's stories can't be told in public, I think, if I remember right.
No. Squire Shop drove all the boats under this poured down rain. The boats were all out in the field. Squire was literally out on the park drive.
I know he
He
is.
hooked all the motion to the coat is all out there. That's why he still did it.
Oh, wow. Wow. My brother had Glenn.
You know, once a manager, always a manager. Bob is up here, he's taking over. He's arranging the furniture. We need two more crew members to come up. Kelly Stockland. Come on, Kelly. By the way, I've been going through a lot of pictures, there's one guy who has not aged in 30 years. And that's Kelly Stockman. He looks the same now as he did back in 1970-something.
Jerry is the one right there. The next chip on the right hand side.
All right, and we have one more opportunity, one more empty chair.
Maybe sure.
Who do you want up, Bob? Danny? Come on, Danny. You can't. So,
Get up there, Dan.
Is there anybody in the back there that wants to come up and sit in some of these chairs?
yeah, we blow over. All right, so before you guys leave, the photographer does want to get some photos taken. But we'll start with you, Bob. Start in the middle. What was the first hydroplane race you went to? What's the first race you remember?
Well, it wasn't a Quicksilver. We were out of town. But as I grew up, my family was a good friend of the family of Stan Sayers. And it was about 52 or 53, I think we went to it. And one of the times when they had the slow-mo out there, and it had broken down in the race, so they came out the next day to test it, and they had a double seat they could put in there, and they thought maybe I might enjoy sitting in with them and riding around. So it was a joy, and I think most people who have ever sat in a hydroplane, you get bit. And here I am.
So you went for a ride in the slow-mo.
Right.
Well, that is very, very cool. And anybody else on the panel been out for a ride in a hydroplane? Any hydroplane. So you were a fan from the mid-50s. When did you make the decision that you wanted to sponsor a hydroplane? And how soon did you regret it?
Probably before I did it. Is it everybody here right?
Yeah.
Okay. We used to take, for the Squire Shop, we used to take out a very large yacht and take a number of employees in the company. We were in 5 states, and they had to have a great sales record, and then we would take their family and them on this. And remember some of those, Bob? Yeah. And it became quite of a family thing with all the people in the company. So when we did finally, Dave Herensberger called me, and Jerry Banks was a very close friend of his, and Bill Muncie's, and he said, don't ever own a boat, but we've got one here that's a local driver. He was an attorney in town, and so they brought to my attention that it could have a name put on it. So we signed up for Tri-Cities, and I asked Jerry, I said, now Jerry, what color is the boat? Oh, it's all white. I said, so we can just put our Squire logos right on it, it'll fit. We get to Tri-Cities, Washington. My sons were with me, some other people were with me with the company, and we had to take it to an auto body shop in town. The guy closed everything up, rolled the cars out of there, and started spraying that boat white. It was blue and purple, and it was for a pop company in back east, so burners. And I said, why would you ever be able, Jerry, to go on a boat and not know what color it was? Especially that color. But anyway, that was our first boat, and we had it, and we went out, and it was, I think Dave for some, but I've always wanted to be involved. And of course, once we got through our first year or two with the boat, I was able to get the number U2. It was being retired by the U.S. boat in Detroit. And the U2 stood for our company. Not only was the boat bought for the company, but it was bought for U2. the employees and all the customers and all the people. And we've stayed with that continuously. That brought the company as well as the fans in, and we enjoy being with the fans and our company.
That's great, Bob. I'm going to ask if you would pass the microphone down all the way, and we're going to start with Danny. And just, if you guys could each take just 15, 20 minutes. A minute, 30 seconds. Tell us your name, how you got involved in the sport, and then what you've done in the sport after Squire Shop, because a lot of you have done quite a lot, Danny.
My name's Dan Walters. I started in the Hydros in high school, working for Mr. Zubich with Olympia Beer. And the thing I was telling my girlfriend Cindy the other day, I was down working at the bottle shop as a volunteer, and I remember saying, like, well, this would be good to do for a living. Or I'd love to do this for a living, and lo and behold, 40 years later, I'm still doing it. So I worked for Jerry as a volunteer, and then they sold to Budweiser, and Tommy Frankhauser called me up and offered me a job, and so that's how I started my professional life in 1977. And then from there, I got a call from the Squire Shop from Chip asking if I'd like to swap camps. So here I'm working on the Budweiser as a 17-year-old turning 18, and I'm looking like I'll never go anywhere here because there's no place to go. And so I went with Chip, and from there, I don't know, there's been like 15, 20 boats. I won't go on and on, but I presently work at Boeing. I'm an inspector for H1 right now. And
So just a real quick question. You say you started working for Zubich. Didn't you have a next-door neighbor that got you?
well, yeah, John Carlson was my next door neighbor. Ed Carlson, built boats, and that's what got me interested in it. And in high school, that's where I met with Zubich, and then my career took off.
Excellent. So Kelly, what you been doing lately? What's on your bucket list?
Yeah. Well, I started boat racing later than most people that do boat racing. I think I was 20. And I saved up all my money, and it took me till I was 20 to get a boat. So that's where I started. And the boat builder that I was involved with, who was a master boat builder, worked at a fishing boat company that is now a mega yacht building company called Delta Marine. And Steve Jones was the master of all those designs, and quite a few people know Steve. And Jerry was working on the skiff project because Steve had to keep the mother company happy on occasion, so he had to do fishing boat projects every now and again. And so he brought Jerry on to work on the skiff, and I was working on the race boats. Then Jerry left and went to the Squire Shop, and he called a couple of months later and asked me to go on the road. And I think I got there the day before my birthday. And the next time my family saw me was about August. My birthday is in May. So the interesting thing was Jerry said, we're going to drive to Florida. And if you haven't driven to Florida, it takes a long time to get to Florida from Seattle. It really does. And that was like 2 weeks after I went to work for Squire Shop. That was our first stop with all the trucks, which is kind of interesting. And Jerry was very understanding about my my innocence to all that. So after I left Squire Shop, I worked with Squire Shop for half my life, I think. Anyway, I went all the way through with when Jim Harvey and Glenn Davis came over with the Atlas, and I went for a year with that, and then I went into the nuclear power industry, And I part-timed with Ron Brown over on the first turbine project at Budweiser. And then left that. And then I was making the robots for the nuclear reactors, and Dave Gilwalk called me and said, I'm going over to Budweiser, do you want to make propellers with me? And I said, okay, that sounds like fun. Went over there, spent 10 years with Budweiser. And then I left that and had my own machine shop going and stuff. And then I got married to my lovely wife, Sharon, and she says, you really like this boat racing thing, don't you? And I says, well, yeah, I really do. And she says, I'm not going to have you on your deathbed wishing that you had driven one of those, since everybody that you've ever gone to work for promised you could drive the boat they had. Every one.
Are you looking at style when you say that?
I'm looking at all of them. So I went and bought my own. And that's where the bucket list thing came from. And we're playing around with that. And we like flopping around on the outside in last place, but at least I got to do it. So, and it goes pretty fast. Actually, it goes faster than the Squire Shop did. There you go.
It goes fast enough to get hurt.
Yes, it does that too.
I have a quick, totally inappropriate story about Kelly. It's when these guys started racing, I was racing too in a much slower boat. We were running. Where's Art? Art Alberto's here. We were running the Old Alberto, and we were happy to finish, but we were pitted next to you guys. And I mentioned earlier those awful white shorts that Squire Shop had. So Kelly has really beautiful hair. For a man, he has really, really pretty hair, and it used to be sort of peroxide blonde. We used to pit next to them and watch the guys come through the pits and see the blonde with the really pretty hair and the tight white shorts and go, watch this. They don't know he's a guy. You watch this. We saw so many poor rednecks in Madison or Evansville just totally have gender issues for the rest of their life.
Well, I've disappointed many people, I guess.
As long as your wife isn't disappointed. JC, it's your turn.
Well, after all, he is the hydro hippie. Everybody knows that. My name is John Courtright, and I had worked on a bunch of limited stuff inboard, and worked with David one year, either 79 or 80 or something, and started washing parts for the Squire. And Kelly told me, oh, hey, it's just life on the road. It's like a Caribbean cruise. You get all the sleep you want. You get to bed regularly. So I quit my Boeing job, and I'll never forget my mother going, you might as well join the circus. I said, no, Mom, not circus, the Squire Shop. You know what I mean? So I did that for up till 85, and then went back to Boeing. And now I'm just a retired poor apple farmer in Chelan, Washington. And I live part-time in the Baja because I can't afford to live anywhere else. But no, actually I'm still pretty well connected. We had a big event last weekend called Mahogany Merlot. Anybody went to Mahogany Merlot? Good. So we're still plugged into it a little bit. So enough of me. Zoomer.
Oh yeah, hey, I'm Jerry Zavich. My hydroplane stuff started in '62 after a year of fishing with my dad, where I made $52 one season salmon fishing. So I thought that wasn't for me. So I was the first full-time paid employee for Bartol's crew. And then it went on through that, both boats with Ronnie Musson and, of course, Billy Shoemaker, and then with Chip in the Squire Shop. And we've had some good times there. One of my favorite moments is when we won the Pasco Tri-Cities Cup on an old beater engine. That Acme was an engine that we used for testing. It was dimpled, rusty, pistons. I mean, this thing was really a work, and we just used it, you know. But we went through a bunch of motors earlier, and then I think Don Byers had a pickup, and another guy drove over Saturday night, picked this engine up, brought it in, put it in the boat, and we won the damn race. Chip pulled out around, pulled inside Budweiser, who was dominating everything. And I think Chenoweth at the time, I think was driving, I think he just snoozed. He didn't understand that we had little horsepower. That Chip snuck around him, and be damned if we didn't win the race. But the boat came to the shore, and there was water pumping out of the pistons, and the gearbox was broken, and the propeller's tips were come off of it. So, but it did it. So that was the last for Acme. And since then, I've been working off and on a few boats, and then my newest program is I'm a port engineer on a 120-foot fish boat, and it has roughly 2,700 horsepower, combined engines and hydraulics and whatnot. So it's kind of like a race boat. We send it up north in perfect shape, painted, blah, blah. It's a hard fishing boat, like it's a hard running hydro. And if it doesn't run hard, I give them a tune-up because I have nothing to do. It's just like a race boat. If it's not running hard and you ain't breaking it, you are not going fast. So you got to keep me employed there at my fish boat programs now. So I keep telling them, keep catching lots of them. So, okay, Jim.
What was I supposed to talk about? My name is Chip Hanauer. Bob gave me my first job as a professional hydroplane driver. He came over and interviewed me. I was a junior high school special ed teacher, and he came into Port Townsend and interviewed me and gave me my first job driving boats. I owe all of these guys an apology because I'm really looking forward, or was looking forward to this occasion to apologize, because I destroyed 2 perfectly good boats all on my own. And the first one was me being young and inexperienced and cocky, and the other one was getting a horrible start in Mexico and hitting Bill's boat after he went over. Worst start I ever got in my life, and it cost us the boat. And I caused a lot of work for all these guys and a lot of expense for Bob, so I have felt bad for decades. I have about the havoc that I raised at the Squire Shop. So, anyway, I went on and drove some more boats, and now I'm retired.
So you broke the boat and then you quit.
I want to tell you something. As personal director of personnel at the Squire Shop, he added so much to our boat and to all of our employees and to all the people out there. And I commend you, Chip. You should come here proud. Yes, apology accepted by Doc down here in the end. I'll pass it on now. Designer.
I'm Dave Nolan, and I can't say anything more than I worked for the guy sitting next to me, who owned, actually founded and owned Norberg Custom Boats, Norm Berg. Kind of interesting. I raced limited hydros back in the 60s and early 70s, and was out of the sport at that time. And I was working at Boeing. I was an engineer, and at that time, and somehow we connected over a boat that Don Dew had asked to have designed, and we were looking for a builder, and we went down to Tacoma, the vocational school, and ran into a guy named Joe Trumley. And Joe was very insistent that we go out and see Norm, because he said he was one of the best that he had ever come across, and I would only say that that proved out in all the years that we worked together. So we struck up a deal and collaborated for a number of years on a lot of limiteds and some unlimiteds. Norm built the Blue Blaster boat that was designed by Jim Lucero. But through all the years, I didn't think that Norm got the credit that was due him for the Blue Blaster. It was a beautiful boat and very well constructed. And he had been contacted a couple times by Bernie Little, as well as myself. And we came up with a boat design. We actually had two of them. We had what was called the A boat and the B boat. And the A boat was the one that Tom Frankhauser, who was the current crew chief, wanted. That was a Merlin power boat. And the B boat was Cully's boat, Dave Cully, and that was a Griffin powered boat. But Cully made it clear he favored Ron Jones. And Bernie couldn't decide what to do with it and whether to buy the boat or not. And Norm flew down one time to San Diego to have a discussion with him on it. And he was always going to have a chip in it or a check in his back pocket, but I never did see it come about. And the gentleman to my right and his driver called one day and said, we had a successful boat called the White Lightning, driven by Steve Reynolds, a 2 1/4 boat that ran pretty good. And they said they wanted to come down and talk about a new Unlimited. And they showed up in the front driveway of my house, and I remember I forgot to tell my wife that they were coming. And she looked out there and she said, there's the biggest gold car I've ever seen in my life. And I think I recognize the guy there. That's Chip Hanauer. Who's the other guy? And I said, well, he kind of owns the Squire Shop. And I guess I forgot to tell you, so sorry about that. But we welcomed him in and we laid the blueprints out on the floor. And I had talked to Norm earlier about that, and I could act on his behalf. So I think we quoted a price on that at that point in time and said we could get the boat out for next year. And that was the B boat. That was the Merlin, or it was the Merlin powered boat. It was a long time ago. And of course, it was about 3 weeks later that Bill Bennett came down, came up to Seattle, and we ended up selling him another boat. So we had two boats that were being built side by side during that winter. It was certainly an exciting time for us. Norm still produced a number of beautiful limited hydros. I think we kind of collaborated until about the mid-'80s when we realized that it wasn't feasible to design and build boats out of these exotic materials and find people that could drop the kind of money they had to spend after you build an autoclave and paid for all of the stuff that was necessary to make them go fast. And so we kind of went our separate ways, but remained friends through all of the years. And this is really a highlight for me personally because we get to see a lot of old friends again. And I think Norm should get his general due that he built some of the most beautiful boats that were out in that era. And with that, that's kind of an introduction to you, Norm. So I'll pass this over.
I'm Norm Berg, boat builder. I always loved boats. I went to Bates Vocational School in Tacoma, took the class, served my apprenticeship down Tacoma and Berlin fishing boats. And I built a few wood ski boats and stuff like that in my shop I had out in Spanaway. And then one day when I met Dave Nolan, and he gave me a call and said maybe we should get together and we could build some hydroplanes, and we did, and it's worked out really well. And I was lucky to build the Alice Van Lines with Jim Lucero. I was doing, we were doing all the work really for Budweiser and doing repair jobs and painting them. And the natural, let's see, what was it? Another burning boat, I can't remember. No, it was the Natural Light. Well, I had a lot of work with Bernie, and I remember Bernie coming down to my shop, which was this little 2,200 square foot building down in Spanaway, which is way out in really horse country. And he came down this bus, and we had to have water pictures taken and everything, and he said that he would have flown down his helicopter, but it was a foggy day. And I guess he really thought that we were going to build him a new boat. And then when Chip and Bob Stiles came down and ordered a boat, Bernie found out about it and called me from Florida and said that he would not be second in line. And then, I guess, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, I think Dave got a call from a guy in his Learjet flying from Las Vegas to La Habra, California. It turned out to be Bill Bennett. And we got the job to build the new Circus. And so it's been a really interesting career. I think I've been pretty lucky. And I really thank Dave Nolan. I mean, he was, if it wasn't for Dave, I probably would have been in hydroplanes. Maybe would have been building impersonators or something. I don't know. No, that's where we are today. I wish I were younger so we could do some more.
Time's caught up with us.
Hi, my name is Don Byer. I kind of got involved with the Squire end of '79, I guess, 80. I was with them through '84, I believe. I remember that Cadillac, Bob. I had to drive that thing to San Diego one time. It floated all the way, just like a boat. In fact, we had to stop on just this side of the grapevine to fix an oil leak in it. Did that real quick, had to get back on the freeway to catch up with the trailer, the truck towing the boat, because we didn't know where we were going. So anyway, that was fun. I want to add to Jerry's story a little bit about acne. It was kind of interesting. We did break a bunch of motors. We didn't really have a complete engine left in the pits. I volunteered, and really I did. Nobody twisted my arm. Volunteered to drive this motorhome, and that's a generous description of it. You know, the whole cab was separating from the body. It was kind of in tough shape. It would have vapor lock going up hills. It's 100 degrees out, barely made it up the hill from Vantage. And I'm towing a horse trailer that I'm going to put this engine in. And I had somebody with me. I can't remember who was with me. But thank God, the only crane we had in the shop would lift the engine off the floor vertically. I had no way of getting the engine horizontally into that trailer. And somebody left their Volkswagen in the shop that night, or that weekend. Was that you, Larry? Yeah. Thank God. Larry's Volkswagen was in there, and the whole rear end of it was, you know, customized to the point where it wasn't there anymore. So it left that oil pump cover there real nicely. So we were able to put a 4x4 between the Volkswagen and the engine stand. So when the crane's coming down and the engines go, or the Volkswagen's pushing like hell, we were able to shove this thing into that horse trailer. And I think we were having oil problems, so we had to make a run over to Bardol and pick up a bunch of oil too. We got back to Tri-Cities, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning. And of course the thrash was on as soon as we got up, got to the pit area to try and make an engine out of it. I think we had the 580 blower on it, and we had to put the 6.0 blower on it, a little bigger blower. And so we had the preliminary heats. We have qualified for the final. Overnight, or late in the previous day's afternoon, they kind of sort of made a runnable engine out of the pieces left of the other 3 that were there. So we're talking to Chip, and we're saying, so what do you think, Chip? Should we put this other engine in for the final? And Chip, I remember, he says, but this one's still got oil pressure. By then, the thing had over 100 laps of it. I mean, this thing was ready for a boneyard 50 laps ago, but good old Acme just kept putting and putting and putting. So as soon as Chip said it still had oil pressure, Jerry raises his hand, come on guys, we're going to lunch. So away to lunch we went, but that final heat was something. I think it was the one and only final heat in the history of unlimited racing where 3 different boats shared the lead in the final lap. The lead boat at the beginning of the final lap was Muncie in the Blaster, and he didn't quite make it to the first turn before his engine expired. Chenoweth was on the outside, about lane 3 at that time. I think Chip might have been even outside of Chenoweth. But Chip saw something, and dipped to the inside coming out of turn 2. And whatever nitrous was left in the damn thing, he used up. Passed the Budweiser. Chenoweth was snoozing. Chenoweth is taking the turn 3. We passed the Budweiser, but you could hear it. I mean, we're at the far end. We're down at turn 1. It's where the pit area is. You could hear that Griffin spooling up and chug like it used to go. And Chenoweth is coming, but didn't quite catch it. So Chip crosses the finish line, and as he's entering turn 1 to maybe take a victory lap, there's more smoke and steam and crap coming out of this motor than you could possibly imagine. And what Jerry forgot to ask, when he came back to the pits, he came back pushing a very stiff rope. And it was quite exciting. There were so many people on the finger piers in Tri-Cities, we were all standing in about 2 feet of water because the piers had sunk. They were still floating, but they were underwater, and here we are, just standing in the water. And get that thing back up, and the picture is on here of me kissing that motor with the water running out of the engine stack that had a bouquet of flowers in it that was given to us by Brenda Jones. And that was funny. And Bardall was so excited because they had a big influence on us for that race and for the oil that they provided for us and the sponsorship they provided for us. So the bar ticket that night was on Bardall. Wow. We had 2 crew members spend the night in bathtubs that night. Anyway, I could go on, but a lot of this stuff can't be told in public.
I don't think I've ever told this story to the crew. That race, after the boat went out, King TV came over to me and said, would you like to go up on the crane with us while we film this? And I said, yeah, I'll go up with you. And after I got up there, they said, you know, we took a count of who was going to win this race. No way in hell was the Squire Shop going to win it. They said, you're going to be the winner of this race. And I said, okay. And all the boats came down, and Bill Muncie went up by at first, and started up the back way, and bam, he went down. They go 1 down. Then they go 2 down, because here comes Chip on the inside of him, and Chip always grabbed the inside. I learned one thing about driving on a road and everything else. The closest way around is on the inside, right? No other way. And here he comes, that engine puffing, and I thought, and Dean's down there kind of waving to the crowd and everything. He thought he had it all wrapped up, and that boat went across that line. And they said, see, we told you you were going to win. I said, there's no way in hell I would have ever taken a bet on that. I'd also like to say that this is why my family traveled with us, and this is why it was such a joy always to be involved just as an employee for Squire Shop continuously. And this crew should have, all that time they were with us, night and day, if something happened, something exploded, they were there 24 hours. And I'll tell you something, thank you to the Unlimited Hydroplanes, and thank you to everybody that worked for Squire, either on the crew or anything else. Thank you all. And thank you, people, for being our fans.
I want to take just a second here. It's obvious that you're a family, that you're a crew. The crew means family, and you can't, the driver gets a lot of credit, but it's a group of people that put it together. And the same that was true then is true now. And there's a group of people that have put together the event tonight and also have spearheaded the Squire Shop restoration up to this point to get the boats, because we have 2 of them now, and we have a motor, and we have some money that's been generously donated by some from Bob and some from a very generous anonymous donor. But I'd like to bring up Gary Stiles, Krista, bring your family up and take the microphone and introduce yourselves.
Thanks for coming, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet some of you for the first time. I'm glad y'all came out. I'm not very good at public speaking, so bear with me. I'll introduce everybody here. I'm Gary Laws. I run the website for the restoration and the history of the project. That's my lovely wife, Christy, mother, Carol, my father, Edwin, and Doug. You're out there hiding. Stand up. Come on, stand up. Take a bow. There's Doug. He's our good partner. So we're hoping to have some good things coming up soon. Like I say, me and Bob, we're going to go on this together, and we're going to get the best Squire Shop restoration we can out of this. So we hope you guys are along for the ride, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Right.
So I asked one question and we spent about a half hour on it, which was very cool. I don't want to be the only one that talks. I do have some questions, but I'm wondering, is there anyone in the audience that wants to give a question to the panel? All right, think about it. I'll get back to you. To move back down this way, and we'll start with Don, because you notice Don is a little shy. He doesn't like to talk very much. So we'll just go this way. Best Squire Shop memory. Win, loss, you know, the best memory.
Well, that Tri-Cities win was great. I really can't talk about the other stuff.
It's just a few of us here.
You know, just like most of the people even today in the sport, we get started as volunteers. And I had an interesting opportunity because I knew Jerry and told him, you know, I want to go, but Squire wasn't willing to really fly me to race sites. And I had the luck of being married to a flight attendant that gave me the privilege to fly anywhere I wanted to for free. And so that was a big key to my ability to become part of this, which was fun. I mean, I remember sitting in the Rooster Tail in Detroit. Some of the things that were going on at that table were really fun, you know. We were a low-budget team. I, like my fellow crew members, are racers. So it was an opportunity to truly want to win, to know you had that slight chance of winning, the passion of winning, and in some ways, maybe someday it would happen. So, I mean, that Tri-Cities race was the most memorable moment.
Well, let's see. This was kind of a little different, I think, but my employee, Bob Mackey, who was an excellent employee, and I were going up to do some repair work on the Squire Shop at their shop up across from the Kingdom. And I had my El Camino 69. And in the back I had like a piece of 3x3, I don't know what we're repairing, but like a 20 thousandths aluminum. When I took that out of the back of the truck, the wind was always seemed to be blowing there. They took and whipped that thing and made a big scrape right up my car. And it was still there when I sold the El Camino a few months ago.
I just have one last reflection. I was reflecting on that great big gold car parked in the driveway. My kids, I had two young good girls, and they were big fans of Chip Hanauer, and Chip coming over that night was quite something. In fact, it's my oldest daughter, her name is Debbie, who's now has 3 daughters of her own, and she's in her mid-40s. She said to me that that was one of the highlights of her life because she got to meet really cool racers. And I said, well, you met a few of them through our boat racing efforts. And he said, well, yeah, but They weren't Chip Hanauer.
I think we've talked more about that Cadillac gold car, 20 feet long, more here than we've talked about hydroplanes almost. But people have all had an experience of it, and we used to do a lot of building, and my son was in charge of the building construction that went on for different things we were doing. And that car, I'd drive up on the construction job, and they say, "Oh, you brought the truck." That back trunk you could lay down in and take a nap, full length of it. And so they'd say, "Go up and we need 10 sheets of plywood and 6 of this and that." And sure enough, I drive up and they look at this, "Where are you going to put this wood?" I said, "In the trunk. 8 feet long, it go right in the trunk." So it was an interesting car, but it sounds a lot more, it entertained a lot of people here. I wish I did. My son was embarrassed, I think, many times around his friend that his dad was still driving that car, but no, we've passed it on.
I think there were some crew people that weren't here when we did the photograph. It's Chris. Did Chris Ginn walk in? Chris, are you here? Larry Stenbacher, were you up here for the picture? Where's Chris? Oh, there's Chris. Larry Stenbacher, stand up so people can see you. So, you know, my favorite moments, or the whole thing with racing, was my relationship with the crew guys. I just was in awe of this crew and all the crews and how hard they worked and the great pieces of equipment they gave me and the dedication and the hours and all that they put in. So, as I look back on racing, it's never about anything in the boat. It's just my relationship with all the guys I got to work with and in the company. I was the personnel director. I don't know why that's funny. Sue Small she and I started a personnel department in a company. Where's Sue? Stand up, Sue. There you go, Sue. Sue was a huge help to me, and a huge help, I think, to the race team. I mean, she was, whatever we needed done, Sue was there to do it. We also had a group of people that acted as our social directors, and that was Tad Dean and the Buffalo Brothers. So, Tad, stand up. There's Tad and Tim. And when I look back on the Squire Shop, I think of two things. One is, as I said earlier, the crappy job I did, and the boats I destroyed, but just the relationships I had. All racing, it all gets down to the relationships. So, thank you, guys.
One of the unspoken crew members that we had, his name was really Peter Carey, but he answered to Viola Flake. If I'm lying, I'm dying. You know? And that Cadillac looked really good going down the road with Viola, with his silk bandana on, his airplane glasses on, and his head sticking out of the sunroof, driving with his feet on cruise control. Now, I don't know if you ever knew that. That's kind of how some of the things got going. We had one kind of a cool motorhome for a while. It had a back door, and a couple of our guys got a little overindulged, and the back door is open. Once someone's hanging on to someone's foot, and the other guy's head's out the back of the truck. Well, I don't want to mention anybody's name, but I'll pass it.
Before I pass on, there's one guy that I know everybody here was impacted by, and that was Bob Esplin. How many crew guys worked for Bob? Yeah. Bob was Greg Duncan, another crew. Come up here, Greg. You're an important part of the group. Bob Esplin, for me, when I see the commercials, the most interesting man in the world. To me, that was Bob Esplin. He was the most difficult man in the world. In my mind, he was the most difficult, and he had some issues, but he was the funniest man in the world. And every day at the shop, he could have 10 brand new jokes. He worked extremely hard. He was a brilliant man and the most cantankerous human being I'd ever met. But this day couldn't happen without a mention of Bob, so I wanted to be great.
This Bob Esplin, this Bruce Goose, have you ever heard of any of it? And Howard Hughes? Bob Esplin was the co-pilot on that plane when they took it off. That's the kind of things he did. He brought the planes back snuck over the line in World War II and brought planes back. He also oversaw all Allison engines that were built for General Motors during the war and everything else. He's a very interesting person, very intricate though, boy.
He also coordinated the wet t-shirt contest in Tri-Cities every year.
I always remember that he had a cigarette in his mouth and the smoke was always in one eye. An adventurous story that I remember is that we were coming home from Texas in the old Astro cab, and Jerry was driving and I was shotgun. And the boat was full of fuel because we only got about a half a lap in Texas before Armstrong took off the front end. And Kelly's behind us in the motorhome. And so we pressed the top coming down the grapevine. And we're not down that thing a quarter mile, and Jerry goes, I don't have any brakes. And I said, well, yeah, sure you do. He goes, I don't have any brakes. And he starts weaving in and out of traffic, and he's Catholic and I'm Catholic. He says, JC, start saying Hail Marys because we're going to die. And he just, it was just, and then he goes, I'm going to try to use the trailer brakes. So he tries to apply the trailer brakes. The line breaks, and it's on fire now. The whole side of underneath the boat's all on fire. I go, good, now we're going to die for sure. But through the grace of God, we got down to the flat part and kept putting it in the gravel, and Kelly ran up and put the fire out, and now what are we going to do, you know? So we all jumped in the motorhome, and none of us had a nickel. And we go to an auto parts store, and remember we had brand new tennis shoes in the back that Bob, we gave him like 10 pairs of tennis shoes for a brake line.